So, as you guys are going to be working on your final projects, you're going to be solving conflict. So, it's really important to think about what you're doing in a conflict and what outcomes that leads to. I like to think of this as actions have consequences, but the book phrases it as how people handle conflict leads to a particular outcome. So, we've got 5 different ways of handling conflict. We've got avoidance, right? That's kind of like where you just like ignore it, or you say, I don't want to talk about this right now, or you use skirting or sniping, some of those avoidance techniques. There's accommodation where someone's engaging in conflict with you and you're just like, okay, you win, no whatever you want, no big deal. My goals don't matter. Competition, that's if that makes sense. Two people kind of going at it, not really not a whole lot of collaboration there. Just both are trying to win and might not necessarily be thinking about the relationship goal of like, hey, we're in this conflict right now. What's our actual goal for this conflict? But some people just like their goal is to win, whether it's right or wrong. Also, there's reactivity. I call this throwing a plain vanilla adult temper tantrum. That is just where you're like flying off the handle, saying whatever, throwing stuff. Physical violence comes into play, or it can come into play here. In the textbook, McCornack gives the example of a girl that threw like a vase of flowers at his head, and she was actually mistaken or had the wrong information anyway. So anything to that caliber is reactive. And then finally, hey, we have one that doesn't sound so bad, collaboration. And none of these are bad. I honestly, like, it really depends on how we were raised and what kinds of models for conflict we saw growing up. Like, my dad is an avoider and he's very reactive, so I learned to be a very avoid. I tend to be like, my knee jerk ways of doing conflict are avoiding or reacting, and I've had to learn over the years. Like anything else we've talked about this semester, interpersonal communication skills have to be learned. You're not just like born a great effective communicator. And it's the same with conflict skills. Like, we aren't born with inherent perfect conflict skills, unless maybe your parents were very collaborative and you saw very collaborative ways of both people getting exactly what they need out of a conflict growing up. I didn't have that, so I've definitely had to do some learning. But it's just like anything else we've talked about this semester. You can be a better listener, you can be a better partner, and you can be better at handling conflict. So just a little sidebar about that. Each one of these has different outcomes. So avoidance, lose, like the person trying to solve a conflict by talking to someone that avoids them, they lose, and the person that's avoiding loses. Accommodation, the accommodator loses. Whoever they're engaging in conflict with wins. Competition, obviously, looks like the accommodator and the competition person would be like a complementary relationship, right? Like, one person always accommodates, the other person always competes. So one person's always losing, one person's always winning. Reactivity, that's definitely lose as well. Like, no one is winning from a plain vanilla temper tantrum. And hey, good news, guys. Collaboration is win-win. So these are all of like, this is the behavior, the handling of it how is the behavior that you're using within a conflict to try to solve the conflict. And that leads to an outcome, right? Like, you break up, you solve it, it goes unsolved, and it comes up again and again. Like, there's just different things that happen as a result. So these are our 5 different ways that this can end up, our 5 different resolutions. So separation has a lose-lose outcome. Domination has a win-lose outcome. See, you're probably already starting to draw the parallels between the 2 columns here. See, wouldn't it be nice if the textbook had this great little chart? It's okay. Harkins made one for you. And then we've got compromise can be seen as a win-win partial or a lose-lose partial, because both parties are giving up a little bit of something. But I'm a glass half full person, so I like to say it's a partial win-win, because people are ultimately compromising and they're not engaging in domination or separation. And then the integrative agreement. So Let me give you an example. So let's see how these all line up first, okay? Hey, that's the good news. So avoidance leads to separation, reactivity can lead to separation. Separation can be okay, or like avoidance can be okay in the short term. Like I personally, if someone's in my face and is like getting kind of heated, I'm emotionally getting a little bit charged as well. And it's harder for me to think. Like it just like my cognitive thinking kind of shuts down and I get like a little bit more physical reactions. And I have more of that knee jerk going back to my old school ways of doing things, my avoidance reactive patterns from my past. So if I could just like, ooh, time out, can I go collect myself and then come back and revisit this conflict? So that's the important part. If you're going to separate on a conflict, it's always, if you're going to use it as a short term solution, you do have to come back and revisit that conflict with a cooler head to ensure that you actually get that conflict solved, or it could pop up again and be a persistent problem. So domination, obviously, we kind of talked about accommodation and competition are both going to lead to that because the competitor is actually dominating the accommodator. But so compromise, structural improvement, and integrative agreement are three different types of collaboration. Yay! Oh my God, I love it. It's the good news, folks. So with compromise, both parties give up a little bit. So I'm gonna do an example and I'm gonna use it for the next three here. So let's say we've got Sam and Bob. So Sam and Bob are planning on going on a camping trip this weekend. This weekend, right? This one coming up. And Sam just realized she's got this work thing that she really should go to. She's known about it for months, but she just totally forgot about it. So she comes up to Bob and she's like, a compromise here would be, hey, Bob, I'm so looking forward to going camping with you, but I have this work thing. Can we just focus on us getting to do something together? So in a compromise situation, they both give a little bit of something up. So it'd be they go to the conference, the work conference for one day, and they go camping for one day. So then they still get to do something together for the whole weekend, and they still get to do the thing that they originally wanted to do, but they just have to give up a little bit to make it work, right? So it takes a lot of flexibility. You have to be willing to be flexible to engage in collaboration. So an integrative agreement, we use this same approach, and we have them say, okay, well, we can go camping any weekend. Let's go ahead and we'll go to the conference together this weekend, and then we can go camping the following weekend or in 2 weekends. So we still get to spend the time together, but Sam gets to go to the conference for 2 full days, and then 2 weeks later, Sam and Bob both get to go on their camping trip together. So they both get exactly what they want, but they have to be very flexible in how they achieve that outcome. A structural improvement is an integrative agreement that then creates a rule for the relationship. So they would do the same thing, going to the conference this weekend, going camping in 2 weeks, but they would create a rule for the relationship to try to keep this from happening again. So maybe that would be doing a shared calendar, right? I feel like a lot of couples are doing that these days. I know my husband and I personally could probably benefit from that. We don't do it, but we don't really have that much going on that our schedules conflict with each other that much, but for really busy folks. And the kind of thing like a conference, you know about a conference for like a year in advance. So that definitely could have been on the calendar and planned around. So if you come up with that rule, then you really help to you help the relationship win. So you can't see it here, but a structural improvement is a win-win-win. Both parties win and the relationship wins. Now, are you going to be using compromise, integrative agreement, and structural improvement in all the relationships in your life? No, that would be impossible. It would just be such hard work. It'd be like thinking back to nonviolent communication. Are you going to use nonviolent communication in every situation that you get upset about in your life, or in every situation where you want to express yourself honestly? No, you're going to save that for those people on that scale of intimacy towards the I, you, I, thou end of the spectrum. So for the relationships that really mean something to you, strive towards collaboration. If it's a workplace relationship, a lot of times you just have to accommodate because it's your boss, or, sometimes you have to collaborate just for the sake of collaborating, even if you don't want to be working with the people. Like, that's just kind of part of life. But control what you can and really put in the effort in those relationships where this is really important to you. And finally, you're going to need to be using these terms talking about handling it and outcomes and resolutions when you're working on your final presentations in the next few weeks. So just please keep all of this in mind as we're heading into the last weeks of class.